Welcome back to Burnt Rubber Racing Network. I'm Trey Farley. Along with me is Chris Prince. Chris, how are you doing right now?
I'm good, man. How are you?
All pretty good. Yeah, it's Friday. Finally
Yeah,
off of work for a couple of days. Get to watch some racing this weekend.
that's for sure. Yeah, this is my weekend off, so it being the last weekend of championship weekend, it's good for me. So,
Just bring up the big elephant in the room here. It's championship weekend. Potentially the truck race tonight. We talked here. Rain coming into Xfinity practice, so maybe no truck race tonight. We have the
yep.
Xfinity Series tomorrow, and then the big dogs on Sunday. We'll talk more about that later, but like you said, Chris, you finally got a weekend off, and what better weekend than championship weekend?
Yeah, it's going to be good. A lot of good on-track racing this weekend. I think the trucks are interesting. If they get to race tonight, I think it'd be a good race. Green track, especially if it's raining, wash the rubber off. But if they race tomorrow, that's fine too. Just more racing to watch tomorrow.
Heck yeah, that just means sitting inside all day and only move to grab another one out of the fridge.
That's right. That's for sure, man. That's for sure. So I think your truck race will be interesting nonetheless. I think Ross Chastain can pull it out. It'd be a huge jolt for him and for that series because he's been like a fan favorite, so to say, since he came onto the scene hard this year.
So before we're gonna stop the championship talk there because that's gonna be the end of the show here, but let's talk about Cole Custer going to the 41, which means Daniel Suarez has no ride for 2020 as of now.
I think it was only coming. It was only so long before you heard it. I think that they finally decided to do it. I think it's in a way it sucks for Suarez, but I mean he's been in top equipment since he came into the series and hasn't been able to do anything. I've heard well, he was getting the least fast equipment at Gibbs because they have Denny and everybody. But I mean, come on, you see Truex got thrown into that car this year, and they've all three been solid. Now Eric Jones has been unfortunately the lame duck out, and even he won a race. So I mean, I think it was only natural before it come. I mean, and you can't deny Custer's ready. He was beating Cup Series regulars weekends, and some races that he's won this year. He went toe to toe with Kyle Busch and some of the other big names. So
Big news there with Daniel Suarez being out, like you said. Truex took over this year and is championship contender. And if we go back a couple years ago before Suarez was in that ride, we had Carl Edwards competing for
yeah,
a championship.
yeah. I mean, it's kind of one of those things where I'm not saying Suarez is a bad driver. I mean, he still has his chance. I'd like to see him rebound, but I mean, he's not lived up to par, unfortunately. So, I mean, and in NASCAR, it can almost be like the NFL where it means not for long if you don't win. So,
Yeah, but if you also remember, Joey Logano was one time at Gibbs and was not competing for championships in the 20 car.
that's true. I mean, that's true. I mean, you can't take that away. Maybe he just hasn't found his fit, unfortunately, yet.
Yeah, and Stuart Haas, when you look at who's on the team, I think that he was always kind of the odd man out,
Yeah,
which sucks because he's a good driver and he's an even better person. I mean, I really like Daniel Suarez the person more so than a driver, I would say.
yeah,
Um, but I think he needs to be in NASCAR, or excuse me, let me rephrase that. The Monster Energy Cup, he'll be in NASCAR regardless. He's got the talent. But if he stays in the Cup Series, he's going to have to find a team that fits that personality. And right now, I'm not sure if there really is a team where he would fit in that right at this point.
I don't know. I know. I read earlier, actually, before I left the house, that Edsel Ford really wants to try to keep him in a Ford. So, I mean, that's a big thing. We could see something maybe potentially at front row with now Tiff not being in his car anymore, having to split ways due to health reasons. And Reagan's retiring. I mean, you have two cars there. If sponsorship arises for him, I mean, that could be the big question. I think still is going to be the issue for Suarez is if his sponsorship arises.
Yeah, and that just really shows that there really is a big money aspect to NASCAR. Whether or not you have the cash just from your dad or whatever they want to say, or it's really sponsors for the most part. And with a team like Stuart Haas, you're talking top tier equipment and everything. You got to have someone backing you saying that you deserve to be in it. And his primary
Yeah,
sponsor has been Haas, the guy
yeah,
who owns the car.
yeah. I mean, and that if you remember correctly, that was a big thing with Kyle or Kurt Busch right there at his end. People kept saying that him and Tony didn't get along, but Gene Haas really liked him. So and then, but I mean, you could speculate all day long on what it is and what it isn't. But I think it comes down to the end of the day. If you win, you get to keep sponsors, and sponsors want to put up more money. In my sense, I think NASCAR's on the rise. We've touched on it before. So if he was able to win a few races and be, a contender, I don't think he's out of a ride. I think it's just unfortunate for him that it had to happen like that. Top tier equipment both times he's lost his ride.
Yeah, but you just mentioned in there Kurt Busch, someone else who lost plenty of top rides there with like Penske, Roush. I mean, you name it.
Yeah.
So it's part of part of the game. Sometimes you're not meant to be in that spot. So hopefully Daniel Suarez finds a new home. But Cole Custer in the 41 sounds like one hell of a time for 2020.
Yeah, the rookie class is going to be good, and I think I've talked with Rattlesnake about it on Twitter briefly. It's going to be an interesting class, nonetheless, of rookies. So I think he comes in with a little bit of an advantage, though, because yes, Levine Family Racing is going to have the Gibbs influence for Christopher Bell, but I think it's still going to take some time for that team to use that good equipment. I don't think they're going to be competitive right off the gate, and it's no joke that Richard Childress Racing hasn't been real prevalent in the last, few years. Austin Dillon's had a few good wins, but it's not been consistent enough to where they're a top tier team. But the Chevrolet camp in general is something we don't need to get on because I'll be on that all day.
Yeah, I feel you on that one. But Tyler Reddick there at Richard Childress is going to inherit the 8 car, compete for Rookie of the Year next year with Custer and Bell and whoever else manages again there. John Hunter Nemechek's name's been tossed a little bit, so he may add into that.
Yeah.
But right now, this year's rookie class, people forget we even have one because Daniel Hamrick and Ryan Preece have both been kind of back of the pack almost all year.
Yeah, it's going to be something, too, if Daniel Hamrick wins Rookie of the Year with no ride next year. Wouldn't that be an interesting kind of take on things? I think Ryan Preece has showed good speed. He was good at Daytona, which, all it takes is being a little lucky at Daytona, in my opinion, and you can be good at Daytona. But he's showed some speed at some tracks, and other tracks he's really struggled. But he's one of those drivers that's not in top tier equipment. But if he can do a little more with it next year, we'll see what he can do. And Daniel Hemrick's going to Junior Motorsports. I don't know if you've seen that for like 20-something races. I think he has to win. If he ever wants a hope of getting back into the Cup Series, he has to win. He can't just consistently sneak by with top 5s and top 10s.
Yeah, but that's a great place to be there, Junior Motorsports in the Xfinity Series. Like we touched on last time we were on here, Dale Jr. can't have a Cup Series team because he's affiliated with Hendrick, so that 5th car rule. But in the Xfinity Series, that's the upper echelon of that series is Junior Motorsports, and it has been for years. Keselowski went through there, big names who have contended for championships and even won them.
Yep.
So I think he's going to get a couple wins. I wish it was an entire season instead of just 20 races because, it's his first year, and he's honestly showed some, talent there at the superspeedways, which people devalue that for some reason. But, that's an art form, whether they like to admit it or not.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Yeah, so, I'm a big fan of superspeedways. That's why I'm a firm believer in Dale Earnhardt's Feel the Air. Yeah. I actually saw where someone explained that is in the old days, he had that uncovered face mask or the helmet with no face on it.
Yeah.
And he would actually stick his head to the left and stick it out the window and feel the air. So he wasn't seeing it. It was just smacking him in the forehead at 200 miles an hour.
It's crazy though. I don't devalue super speedways. Like I said, we've talked. I went to Daytona back in July. That's some intense racing product. I can only imagine, even as a fan, watching them zoom by you inches apart at 200 plus miles an hour is crazy to watch. So I can only imagine what it is. But in a sense, like I said, if you have a little luck, you can be considered good at a super speedway.
So we mentioned some names there for Rookie of the Year next year, but right now they're in the Xfinity Series competing for a championship. So I got to ask first, Chris, does one of the big 3 or Allgaier win the race to win the championship? And if not, regardless, who do you think comes away champion of the Xfinity Series?
I think Allgaier's your upset there. I think he has the speed. We just talked about it, Junior Motorsports. He needs it. For his career, I think it'd be good for him. I'm not saying, he's a horrible driver, but that's always been a knock on Allgaier. He's just not been the championship type of driver. If he wins this, it's good for him. But I really think you need to watch Reddick or Bell. I think they've just been really strong. Custer's obviously he's not somebody to count out. But it's just the fact of Reddick won the championship last year. He closed the deal. He knows how to do it. Christopher Bell has won a truck championship. He knows how to close the deal. So they have that, that type of experience. Custer's been in contention, but he just can't seem to close the deal.
Yeah, I'm with you there, but I'm going to go a step further and just say Christopher Bell. I don't
Okay.
think there's a better driver in the Xfinity Series right now. I mean, maybe next year in Levine Family Racing we'll see a little bit of a difference, but
Yeah.
right now in top tier Xfinity equipment, there's no one better. I mean, he dominates every racetrack he goes to. I mean, the man's invincible on the track. So I'm going to have to go with Christopher Bell finishing first in the race and in the points at the end of the day.
Well, I asked you one better. What happens if he wins it? Does he turn out to be the next like Biffle or Dale Earnhardt? Because nobody's ever won all three championships.
Yeah, I mean, there's a good possibility there, and I think Greg Biffle's someone who's very underappreciated in NASCAR. I mean, he 3 straight years he won at Homestead. The race, it's going on Sunday. Greg Biffle owned that race for 3 years,
3 years.
and that was back when it was obviously the championship race. Not, see, I think he was actually there at the beginning of the chase, so it would have
Yes.
been a playoff format. So similar to what we have today, and he dominated it. He just didn't have the points for the rest of the year to make it to
Yep.
like the championship. Let's look at the Monster Energy Series. Who do you have winning the race? Because obviously at this point it's going to be one of those four. They've won almost every race this year.
Yeah, I think. Daryl touched on it in his article. 21 out of like 31 races, or 22 out of 31 races, the championship four have won this year. So I'm with you. I think one of them's going to win it. I think you need to look. Hamlin, is an obvious choice. For a lot of people, he won in a must-win situation last week. I don't know what more momentum you need than that. But I don't see him closing the deal as much as I hate to say that for Hamlin's fans. I think that it's going to be. I'm going to go on a goose here and pick Kevin Harvick, the closer. I'm going to pick the
Solid
closer.
choice.
I think he wins the race and wins the championship. And I think he just cements his legacy a little more by doing it in some sort of dominating type of fashion, as much as I hate to see that, because it's probably going to be a boring race if he does it in a dominating type of fashion. And my dad's a Kevin Harvick fan, so I'll never get to live that down.
Well, obviously it also would piss off Rattlesnake a little bit too to see Kevin Harvick win it. But I'm not going to go with Harvick or Denny Hamlin. I'm going to go with one of the other Joe Gibbs teammates, with Martin Truex Jr., because when you look at individuals, obviously Gibbs has won 18 races as a team, and then Harvick's got his wins, but the single guy that's dominated this entire season, whether he's won or just finishing in the top 10, it's been Martin Truex Jr. I mean, he's been, and if he gets up front, I don't think anyone's passing this year. I think Logano passing him last year really struck deep, and I just can't see him letting anyone by. I just see him going into the wall if it comes down to it, even if it's Kyle Busch or Denny Hamlin.
That'd be an interesting. I think at that point you can't really use the teammate bias. If it's the last lap and it's for a championship, you're putting somebody in the wall. I don't care who's in front of you. That's my opinion on that. I like Truex. Truex is probably my second choice, but I'm going to go with Harvick. I think I'm going to set on that one and just go with it.
I respect that, but just because you mentioned it there, what do you think about last weekend in Phoenix? Do you think Kyle Busch really let Denny Hamlin win? Because everything I've seen, in my personal opinion, is Kyle Busch just didn't quite have it, and he said it himself.
He didn't have the car. Denny had the car all race. He had a screw up on pit road, or it was whatever it was that got him back in the field. But you could see he was driving through the field. He just ran out of time before stage breaks to get back up front. He had the car to win. I just don't think Kyle had that car.
No, and Kyle also had the obstacle of Ryan Blaney there, as they both went well below the line there onto the apron. Denny stuck up on that high line where he'd been so good.
Yeah.
And like Blaney mentioned, those two tires on that right side, when you're on that high line, that's where you want the grip. And Denny Hamlin just took it. In 2 laps, you're not going to catch him.
No, not in 2 laps. If it was like a 5-lap shootout, maybe you see something. But even then, I think, like I said, Denny had the car to beat that whole race, and he had to have that car. So kudos to him, being able to drive it, and kudos to his team for giving him that type of car.
Well, Denny Hamlin, like he said, is this year feels different, and after passing of J.D. Gibbs there and winning the Daytona 500, yeah, I've heard it before. It just sounds like it's Denny Hamlin's year. So, I'll be interested to see if he can finally get that championship. I think he deserves it. I think he's one of the best drivers of this generation. And, to stay with one team and one sponsor that long, it shows the type of guy that Denny Hamlin really is.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I'll ask you a better question, though. Denny wins the championship. How many more years do you think he has?
I think regardless, Denny Hamlin has at least probably, I'm not going to say a specific number, but 5 to 8 years.
You think
still
so?
at least at the top of the level. Yeah, sure, 100%.
I think you're probably right on the money, but I'm gonna stick with about the 5 year mark. I think here in the next from the beginning of next year to 5 years out, I think you're going to see a mass exodus, unfortunately, of those veteran drivers that we've all grown up watching. The Bush brothers, Denny Hamlin, Harvick, Johnson. It happened a few years ago with Stewart and Gordon. We lost them, simultaneously, it seemed like, and then Junior retired. So I think if he wins a championship, though, I think that he might have one more in him. I think Hamlin might. But I also want to see, as a race fan, not as a Jimmy Johnson fan, but as a race fan, I'd love to see Jimmy Johnson win the 8th championship.
I don't agree with that one, but that's because I was a hardcore Jeff Gordon fan, so I just couldn't root for Jimmy Johnson because Jimmy Johnson beat him quite a few times too. Um, but yeah, Denny Hamlin, I think he'll be there for, like you said, about 5, maybe 6 or 7 years, because they really don't have one in the Xfinity program that's solid quite yet, other than Christopher Bell. I mean, Harrison Burton coming in next year into the 20, he'll probably show some promise, but I think he's got another year down there. Brandon Jones, that's whatever it is at this point. I mean, he's a solid driver, but I'm not sure if he's going to be Cup material.
That's Paul Menard, in my opinion. That's just a younger Paul Menard. Like, that's nothing against Paul Menard.
Yeah,
I mean, Paul Menard won races. I mean, he's just kind of that guy, though. I mean, he used his money and his family to his advantage, and kudos to him. I don't fault him for it, but I mean, I think that's what ultimately is going to happen with Brandon Jones. He'll get a Cup ride. He'll run it till his career's over, just due to who he is and who his family is.
yeah, but I will say one thing: Brandon Jones probably has the coolest paint scheme this weekend with that Juniper Industries. It's got
Yes.
like the green leaf
Uh,
flame looking. I don't even know what you call it, pattern down the side. It's pretty sweet.
yeah, it's pretty cool looking ride. I agree with you on that.
Yes, so we'll see a lot more cool rides there on the track over the weekend. I don't know if we'll get trucks tonight or not, but regardless, we have all 3 this weekend. So probably going to call it quits here for tonight. Rest up if we don't get the truck race. If not, obviously that's where we're going next. And just tune in Sunday after the Cup race. We're probably going to do another video. Maybe me by myself, me and Chris, Chris Rattlesnake, any combination of people. So stay tuned for that. Chris, you got anything?
Yeah, let's give a huge shout out here to Sinclair Oil and Michael Self. They sent us some autographed hats, us over at the Belly Up Racing team. He's been on Chairgating a good bit, and it's a pretty cool partnership. I was pretty excited to see the hats this morning when the postman dropped them off. So I want to give them a shout out, and I look forward to the racing this weekend. It's gonna be interesting.
Yeah, so shout out to Sinclair for the street cred for
Yeah.
all the NASCAR fans, and we're going to sign off here.
All right, man.